I just, why can't we have a kind of a grand bargain on this? It just seems like we're calling each other kooks and liars, and it seems like common sense that vaccines, I mean, even thimerosal, probably don't hurt most people. I mean, if they did, we'd all be dead because they're in a lot of vaccines that we all took. But some do. Obviously, some minority get hurt by this stuff. I don't understand why this is controversial, why we have this emotional debate about something that there is science there. It astounds me that liberals, who are always suspicious of corporations, and you just laid out that case, and defending minorities, somehow when it comes to this minority that's hurt, it's like, you know what, shut the up and let me take every vaccine that Merck wants to shove down my throat.
How bizarre. I remember that song, How Bizarre, How Bizarre.
My. Yes.
Did you hear that, Super Don? This is Robert Scott Bell, by the way. Welcome to Some Health Freedom here at Epic Times. Bill Maher being criticized by Salon.com for a bizarre anti-vaccine rant after an interview with RFK Jr., Bobby Kennedy, over the environmental impact of mercury in vaccines. And they're calling it a bizarre anti-vaccine rant.
It's bizarre. Yes. Listen, yeah. Bill Maher, I mean, you know, some of the stuff that he'll talk about on his show, he's a comedian. It might be bizarre, but in this case, what is it that is so bizarre about what he said?
Well, clearly, Super Don, what's so bizarre is that he actually asked for cooler heads, calmer heads to prevail. Why can't we just have a rational debate or discussion about the merits of, for instance, mercury in vaccines? And RFK is a real champion of the environment, whether you like him or not. He's put his money where his mouth is. He's litigated a lot of corporations that were polluting and gone after them in the court successfully. And as he shares in his story with Bill Maher last Friday on his real-time show on HBO, that he kept meeting moms that were at each of his events over the mercury issue, saying, hey, you need to look at this. You need look, my son, my daughter was harmed after a vaccine. There was mercury in it. Please, you know mercury, look into it. And he was reluctant initially. And he went through the science, and he says, I analyzed the science, and they're going to say, well, he's not qualified. But then again, he had to litigate this, and he had to have scientific backup to say, hey, there's not a consensus on the safety of thimerosal, which is a preservative still used in vaccines, primarily the flu shot more than others, but even the subcomponents of the vaccines that are supposedly mercury-free. But the point of this really is not even the vaccine, it's the discussion, a rational debate discussion of adults talking about it. And believe it or not, that's what Bill Maher was arguing for here.
And that's very bizarre. But the question you have to ask yourself is, why is that bizarre? What you've got is you've got the media who, they're a bunch of true believers. You know, they're reading the bullet points on the memo that's been passed around that, according to the general consensus of science, there is no debate. It is not debatable. But, you know, consensus among who? A consensus among the scientists that say there is no debate. But what about all of the other scientists and the doctors? Yes, guess what? They are out there. They do exist. You just don't hear about them. Why? Well, because the media is in control of the message.
Sure, and there's an inherent bias in favor of a belief system that whether you believe vaccines are right and true and without reproach, without any concern at all, which I think that even the vaccine makers admit that's not true. In fact, the Supreme Court has ruled that vaccines are inherently unsafe. They are. And that is why the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program came into being. The court actually activated in 1988.
Yeah, we covered last week a document that's been uncovered by some folks that within GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, that actually admits that autism is a symptom of administering the vaccine. What do you do with that, right? No. It
doesn't exist, right? And that's the point. And like you said, we've called out Bill Maher when we don't agree with him. He's a far lefty on most things. On the issue of big pharma, he asked the question of his fellow liberals. You know, when you don't trust corporations, why is it that you suddenly set aside your powers of discernment when it comes to the pharmaceutical industry and corporations? And at the end, he, you know, uses the freedom of HBO to push the First Amendment for all it's worth. He says, you know, why is it that you say just shut the F up and take all the vaccines from Merck that they want to dish out or target you or your children with? And I think, again, the point here for this discussion, for our health freedom discussion here in Epic Times, is not whether you're pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine, but the ability to have an adult discussion that consensus is never truly reached in science. There's always something that happens. Facts change over time, and that there may be other ways to address the immune system, and there may be other arguments that are not being made at all or being shouted down. And kudos to Bill Maher on this point, and of course RFK Jr. For standing up against a lot of opposition just by bringing up the point, because his concern is with these kids as it is for us. So thanks for being with us. We've got lots more health freedom to go here on Epic Times and on my show at robertscottbell.com, 6 days a week, 2 hours a day.